Alright, you know the drill. I played 2 games this month, so let's get into it. Ever since the original trilogy remaster that released back in 2019, I've been slowly chipping away at the Ace Attorney series. With Investigations 2 finally being localized into English back in September, I've finally gotten to complete every single Ace Attorney game. Though Prosecutor's Gambit is not my personal favorite game in the series, I can certainly see why it holds that title for so many others, as from a technical standpoint it's the most well-constructed game in the series. To my recollection, Prosecutor's Gambit is the only canon entry where every case directly progresses the plot. Even the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles has those 2 B-plot cases featuring Natsume Soseki. Actually, I find it sort of surprising that after mastering the overarching narrative here in his spin-off series, Yamazaki decided to go the usual episodic route when handed the reins to the main series, as the most praised entries in the series, Trials and Tribulations, the Great Ace Attorney games, and Prosecutor's Gambit, the very game we're discussing now, all feature a strong overarching narrative element. But I digress. Additionally, Prosecutor's Gambit serves as an excellent epilogue to the original trilogy. Not only through the numerous witness cameos, I particularly enjoyed Penny Nichols' cameo wherein Edgeworth forgets who she is, and her text box name tag reads assistant instead of her actual name, but through its exploration of Edgeworth's character post-Phoenix Wright. One complaint I had regarding the first Investigations game was that it felt like Edgeworth had begun playing the attorney when that didn't seem totally in line with his character. They actually explore that idea fully here, and given how often Edgeworth hops to the defense's aid in the main series, I think it's an idea worth exploring. When they were first introduced as an organization, I thought the Committee for Prosecutorial Excellence were a contrived plot device established for the sake of boosting the stakes. But as I continued playing, I realized they existed more as a foil for which Edgeworth could test his convictions against. This utilization of all available plot threads is another way in which Prosecutor's Gambit is remarkably well constructed from a storytelling perspective. There are 3 main things holding back Prosecutor's Gambit from becoming my favorite entry in the series. 1. Case 3 is a bit of a pace killer. Its relevance to the main story is a lot more tangential than the game's other cases. I imagine it was mostly included as an excuse to provide a bit of fan service in the form of playable Gregory Edgeworth, as otherwise its main points probably could have just been summarized during the final case like they did with the SS5 incident. It's not an uninteresting mystery in isolation, but it doesn't service the surrounding cases as much as it probably should. 2, and this one is more of a nitpick, but a common complaint with the Ace Attorney series is that the games will sometimes not allow you to present evidence that in theory should be valid. Largely, I have found this not to be the case, except in this game. This is the only entry in the series where I have personally run into the object versus photo of the object issue. 3, and this is largely a personal issue, but I just don't think the game as a whole quite hits those same highs as my personal favorite entries in the series. It doesn't have the same cathartic finale as Trials and Tribulations, the same carefully constructed mystery element as Spirit of Justice, or Herlock Sholmes. The final case is very good in developing the main cast and tying everything together, but to me it just needed that extra something to push it over the edge. Okay, technically I completed this next one October 1st, but you're just gonna have to give me a pass on this one because I played the bulk of it in September and I didn't want this just to be a 3-minute video about Prosecutor's Gambit. Anyway, fan teams are sort of insane, aren't they? They spent nearly a decade developing a full-length video game, putting in the work to make it as close as possible to the original both in terms of style and scale, and then just drop it online one day completely for free. Honestly, if I were Toby Fox, I'd pull a Sonic Mania and license the Undertale IP to the Undertale Yellow team so they can be compensated for their work while he still gets a cut of the profits. Heck, based on Undertale Yellow's sheer quality, I'd commission them to make prequel games for the 5 remaining Souls as well. As far as I'm concerned, Undertale Yellow is all but officially canon. To speak in more specific terms though, where Deltarune works remarkably well as a spiritual successor to Undertale, taking Undertale's core stylistic components while completely reimagining its gameplay systems, Undertale Yellow is exactly what I would expect to see in a more direct follow-up to Undertale. Though the game follows the same visual aesthetic, the sprite work is more detailed, and there are several instances of more fluid animation than are found in Undertale proper. On top of that, Undertale Yellow cleverly remixes the underground, taking us through altered versions of the Ruins, Snowden, and Hotland, while quietly replacing the least interesting section of the original game, Waterfall, with a much more entertaining locale in the form of the Dunes. Undertale Yellow also greatly expands on Undertale's bullet hell combat system, with more elaborate patterns that both better reflect the different monsters they're attached to and vary more in terms of design. That is, how they move and what you have to do to dodge them. If I may be so bold, I would even go as far as to say that I prefer the plot of Yellow to that of the original Undertale. Now, to be fair, Yellow's narrative could not function without the original game's narrative to use as a base, but as any good prequel does, Yellow utilizes Undertale's premise to set up a more character-oriented narrative heavily entrenched in the original lore. Obviously, Yellow's characters come nowhere close to matching the iconic status of characters like Sans and Papyrus, but they still have a charm of their own. And though I was only lukewarm on Martlet, I really enjoyed what Starlo and Soroba brought to the table, both in terms of personality and narrative stakes. Of course, Undertale Yellow isn't perfect. For all my praises of the narrative, both the beginning and the ending of the True Pacifist run fall a bit flat for me. Going back to what I said earlier about Yellow remixing the Underground, it kind of felt like the writers didn't know what to do until Clover got to the new area. The ruins in Snowdin were included out of a sense of obligation, but apart from the player meeting Martlet, nothing much of note actually happens in either location, leaving the plot relatively stagnant from the game's opening to roughly the 2-hour mark. As for the ending, bittersweet though it may be, Clover's sacrifice kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Going into the final boss fight, it seemed so obvious to me that the game was going to end with Soroba and Clover coming to a truce before Flowey swooped in to kill Clover for not finishing the job. But that's not what happened. I'm not saying that the game was wrong for subverting my expectations, but when you do it without much setup, the whole thing ends up being a bit jarring. Clover certainly has more of a personality than Frisk, but not enough to the point where I thought they would make a move as grand as sacrificing themselves. Additionally, for all the gameplay does to effectively build on Undertale's base, I have to say, the last 2 major boss fights were kind of bullshit. A lot of fast, hectic patterns that were not only difficult to react to on first brush, but difficult to really learn and time dodges to properly without the near abuse of healing items. Also, my game crashed when it tried to roll credits and I had to look them up online. And as usual, here are the updated replay and ranking lists. You might notice 2 new games on the replay list that I didn't talk about, which are Balatro and Trials and Tribulations. Balatro came out on mobile, so I just bought it again because I thought it'd be a great pick up and play game, and it is. I don't have anything new to say about it, so I didn't think it was relevant to talk about in this month's review. As for Trials and Tribulations, I replayed that a few months ago, but I never got around to finishing the final case, and at this point, I don't really feel like it would be relevant to review it in one of the monthly videos. I am thinking about doing an Ace Attorney retrospective now that I've finished all the games in the series, but I want to replay a couple of the ones first that are a little hazier in my memory, namely Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, the crossover, and probably Investigations 1, although I'm not looking forward to that. Also thinking of doing a Trails retrospective because even though I've reviewed all of those games, I kind of want to do a more broader, overarching kind of view of the series because I have a lot of sort of mixed thoughts on it, and I simultaneously really enjoy and find different elements of the series really frustrating. So let me know if there's any interest in either of those videos, although I might do them anyway, we'll see. Finally, now that the end of the year is coming up, I'm trying to decide what to do about the December video. I could either just do the games I played in December, or I could do all the games that I skipped over for the monthly reviews, or I could just do a big compilation where I put all the reviews together. So, any thoughts, leave them in the comments. If not, I will decide myself. But, viewer input is always appreciated. And with that, I will see you all next time.